Today's guest, author of Sister Own Your Finance, Elizabeth Rose. What nice thing can you say about him that he hasn't already said about himself? It's Terry Sullivan.
That's just stupid.
You say that all the time. Words hurt.
I know, but I got to tell you, I'm always amazed that you come up with so much stuff.
There's so many things to say about you, my friend.
I was telling Elizabeth about you writing that song, and it's called The Sullivan Shuffle.
Well, that's just about the dumbest name I've ever heard.
That's what I've been saying.
Okay, I'll take Sullivan out of the name.
Oh, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I talked to Paula, too, this morning. When you get home, it's going to get ugly. Yeah. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead. Elizabeth, it's so good to have you.
It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and we have a lot to talk about. I'm very excited about the book that you have coming out, and we're going to get into that chapter by chapter. We're going to miss a few in there because I'm very interested in you defining some of those chapters, because the title of the chapter is very interesting. So we're going to get into that. Before we do, though, everybody who writes a book, and by the way, the name of the book is Sister Own Your Finances.
Correct.
So you wrote the book really for women who have gone through tough times or in a tough place and financially, and here's an opportunity or a way to get out of that, or at least to move forward, to move north, and to get more peace about where you are in your life. And that's what the book is about, right?
Correct.
And mostly the women, though, although a lot of men could benefit from it as well.
I would agree with that. I think anyone can benefit from it. My heart was to help women, though, because I've seen so many women struggle in that area. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, primarily because oftentimes we don't get involved in that area.
Sure. So let's talk about the backstory.
Okay.
Everybody that writes a book, they write a book because of personal situations, experience, but it's always a personal reason for writing the book. Why did you write this book?
Well, I went through a divorce when I was 40 or 41 and had teenage daughters. And
how long were you married?
Well, we were married 10 years, and it was my second marriage, so he was not the father of my children, but he was a C-suite executive, and we had, all the trappings that come with that, the big house and a lot of assets, some of which were not typical. We had property in another country. We had an LLC that was an offshore deal. So I had a lot of interesting and different aspects to it, but it turned into an ugly divorce and lasted quite some time, a lot of expense to attorneys. And looking back on that period of my life, now I see like how young and naive I was, even though I was 40 years old. And I had been working in finance my entire life, since I was 19 or 20. And I think back then that I thought that I was equipped. I thought that I understood and I knew what I was dealing with. And so I didn't seek counsel from experts or professionals. I mean, certainly I had an attorney. I had a forensic accountant that, documented all the money and figured out what was his, what was mine, what was ours. And and then made recommendations. But at the same time, I just didn't have somebody like that was truly in my corner saying, hey, if you do this, then the result is this. And
Right.
but if we tweak it a little bit and change it a little bit, you'll have a different outcome. And I wasn't looking at outcomes. It was I was just trying to get through.
Just trying to survive
process.
at
Yes.
the time. A lot of crying, a lot of crying with your
Yes.
daughters. Yes, a lot of sleepless nights.
Uh-huh. And you think too, or at least I did. Here I have at the time 17 and 18-year-old daughter, or 16 and 17, somewhere in there. And I'm thinking their life is about to change.
Mm-hmm.
And we had been in a position to be able to give them opportunities and exposure because I always wanted my kids to believe that they could do and be anything they set their mind to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't expose them to all sorts of different options, then their thinking is limited.
Right.
So they had great exposure, and I thought, now I'm going to be wiped out, and how do I provide for them?
Mm-hmm.
And what about college? And what about, all these things?
It's a scary place to be.
Very scary.
Yeah.
Very scary. And so,
Let me ask you this. So that's the way you were feeling.
correct.
Did your girls, did they feel that with you, or did you kind of keep them separated?
I kept them informed, and initially they were part of the emotional response. They had to sit there and watch Mom cry through trying to tell them what was going on. But then I think fairly quickly, within a week or two, I realized that wasn't in their best interest.
Now, their names is Kristen and Amanda.
Correct.
Which one is older?
Kristen.
And so she's 17 at the time, around there.
Around there, and then Amanda's 16.
Did she become mom to you, supporter to you? I mean,
She has actually both of them have very strong leadership type qualities, and so they definitely rose to the occasion. They were protective, but at the same time, thankfully, early on, I kind of pulled away from that behavior, and it's like they're teenagers and they have a life,
mm-hmm.
and their life is not about Mom. Their
Right.
life is about going to school and following their dreams and their passions and,
Well, by this time,
and
they're
continuing on.
juniors and seniors in high school.
Yes.
You don't want to disrupt that, so you kind of take on that whole situation on your own, which makes it
Right.
worse.
Yes, and to top things off, I had only been in Texas, I think we'd been here 2 or 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and moved from another state. And when you are in that stage of life and your kids are that age, you don't really know how to make friends.
Sure.
And so I didn't have a support system here. My support system
No
was in
family.
Georgia. No family.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was very difficult.
A lot of dark hours there,
Yes.
but you made it through it. You got to
I
you got to the other side, and you started writing this book back in 2016, and you wrote a lot of chapters back then, but you put it on a shelf.
Uh-huh.
Bring us up to where we are today. I mean, bring us up to your mindset where you said, I'm going to finish this book.
Well, I am part of a networking group, and it's a Christian-based networking group that is, it's via like a conference call. So there's people from all over the country. And one of the organizers of it has a book publishing company. And so on many of the calls, she was promoting this 3-day boot camp, writing boot camp. And I was just in a season of life where, my grandkids, they're older now. They don't have all that much time to spend with me, and my kids have their lives, and I'm still single. And so I was like, well, I don't have anything better to do. Maybe I should go through her boot camp. And it was just a 3-day thing over a weekend. And so that was just kind of churning in my mind. And then I was like, I've had a book in me for a long time. I need to do that. So I went through her 3-day boot camp. And like with many things of that nature, there was a next step. And the next step was a 30-day writer's, I don't recall what she called it, but when I got to the end of the 3 days, I had made so much progress. And most of my progress, though, was getting in tune with what I wanted to do, like what I wanted to share. And so I went through the 30-day, and the 30-day, and it was every day, like Monday through Friday, you meet for 2 hours on Zoom, and there was a lot of coaching that went with it. And so by the end of 30 days, I had made an incredible amount of progress, and went ahead and committed to working with her for the publishing, and finished up the book. I finished it in really a short amount of time, but I was able to pull a lot of that content that I had already written. I just repurposed it. I rewrote it from a different voice. In 2016, when I wrote it, I had been doing a lot of training in my industry, and I'm in the mortgage industry. And so I think I was speaking more in a technician sort of way.
Sure.
And reading over it was like, this is boring and not interesting, and who would want to read this? And that's why I didn't do anything with it.
Right.
But I was able to pull that out and reuse it and just write it differently.
Right. Okay, so we got a book here. It became out of dark hours from a divorce and maybe other situations as well. 6 years in the making. It's going to release on December the 3rd, 2022. You sent me the manuscript, and I read through a lot of the book over the weekend. And Elizabeth, I have to tell you, it is a great book.
Thank you.
It's a great book.
Thank you.
It will help a lot of people. I hope that sales just fly off the shelf, because it'll help a lot of people, not just women, although that's kind of where you were at, but there's a lot of men that need to own their finances and figure it out and get into a better situation. So let's talk about it for just a little bit. By the way, you got 5 grandkids.
I do.
Okay.
I do. That just sometimes amazes me.
So they're all in the area?
They're all in the area. They range in age from 20 to 13. 13-year-old will be 14 soon. So they're all right here, and I could not be more proud of them. When I was raising my daughters, and some of this I think is in the book, I raised them to be strong young women. I wanted them to rely on themselves and not expect somebody else to bail them out. And my oldest daughter, who it's actually her birthday today.
Which one?
Kristen.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Happy birthday, Kristen. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. La, 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 la. Happy birthday. Very good.
So I recall her telling me we were having...
What are you going to do for her birthday? What's on the agenda?
Well, she's quite popular.
Does she need to know this right now, or is this a surprise?
Well, we're going to have lunch tomorrow.
Okay.
Because her calendar is full today.
All right.
So
okay.
We're gonna have lunch tomorrow and celebrate, and it's just going to be mother-daughter time.
Oh, that'd be nice.
It is. I really enjoy that with my kids.
So.
But I was having a conversation with her years ago on her birthday, telling her about how proud I am of the woman that she's become and the mother that she is and so forth. And I did what I think a lot of moms do. I was going down that path of, in spite of me and all the screw-ups that I made, and right. I wasn't that great of a mom. And she stopped me, dead in my tracks, and she said, "Mom, you know what you taught me?" I said, "What?" Because I was really curious, what is the standout, thing that she has to say about me? And she said, "You taught me that life will knock me down. And you taught me that when it does, to pull myself up by my bootstraps and carry on."
Couldn't be a better teaching than that, right?
Right.
That gets her all the way through life, no matter what, all the way through life. And by the way, just from reading about you, I think you were a pretty great mom. So let's talk about
Thank you.
Sister, Own Your Own Finance. The first chapter, which I thought was an intriguing title, which made me want to dive into it, is Straighten Your Crown. Tell us about that.
Well, I think that, especially if you're going through a divorce, but perhaps if you've lost someone, you know, you're widowed, you think about all the what ifs, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. What's wrong with me? How did I fail? I'm terrible at this and I'm terrible at that, and I blew it over here. And I think we just tend to think negative. And so Straighten Your Crown is like, it's kind of like, no, knock it off. You're wearing a crown because you're a child of God, and you are worthy, you're valuable, you're capable, and maybe you're not equipped, but we can get you equipped. So straighten your crown, get your attitude right.
And you know, a lot of times we tend to think that we're the only one in this, and yet life is life for everyone. And really, no matter what status of life you're on, there are issues and situations and circumstances where you have to straighten your crown and believe that you're somebody and that you can move forward.
Right. And, you know, I think that we do tend to think that, you know, behind the white picket fence is the perfect family with the perfect life and the perfect situation. And I don't know that there's anybody that's gone through life that hasn't had some sort of mishap or tragedy or challenge.
I think Hollywood has given us that. You know, Hollywood has painted that picture, you know, that perfect family, perfect marriage picture. And a lot of times we buy into things that we watch on television as though that is real life. And unfortunately, it is not real life. You know, we have to get up every morning and deal with our issues that are going on around us. So that's a great chapter. Let's go to chapter 3, Control the Chaos. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think that we tend to let the circumstances around us get in our head, and it gets us off track. It overwhelms us. And I'm a big believer of mindset and right thinking. And I think that, you know, what we put in our mind and what we allow to control our mind can flow into everything that we're doing. So I'm also like a very system and structure person. I like order, you know, ask my kids, you know, the refrigerator has to be a certain way and the closet has to be, you know, so I like patterns and order. And
are you a control freak? Be honest now.
Not completely. Not completely.
Okay, you borderline?
I do have a borderline disorder with that.
All right, so let's back up. So I want to go into something you just said. We are what we put in our minds. What we put in our minds filters into who we are, right? I heard a saying one time that said, "You're not what you think you are, but what you think you are." And that's what you're talking about. And I think people miss that. I think parents miss that in getting that into their kids' brain, that you got to be careful about what you watch. You got to be careful about what you read. You got to be careful about the people you run around with, because eventually that will be who you become. Yes.
I totally agree with that. That expression, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Sure. Okay, so that's number 3. We've got to get going here. I could talk to you for several hours about this book, and we may end up doing that. Number 5, take authority over your debt.
This is something too that I think that we're not taught, unfortunately. And I know when I went through school, we didn't have any financial classes whatsoever. And then when my kids came along, I think they had a class where they learned how to balance a checkbook or something. And I don't know what they're teaching now, but I know that it's still very limited. And with money...
I'm pretty sure they're not learning about the checkbook. Kids, I don't think know what checkbooks are
Well,
these
you're
days.
right. You're right.
What is that? I got to write it out?
A piece of
we don't do
paper?
that. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So taking authority over your debt, really it starts with paying attention to your money. If people would understand that, first of all, money it's just an innate object. It's a tool. It's a tool that we have to buy and sell and trade to get the things that we need. But if we don't pay attention to, it starts with paying attention, if we don't pay attention to our money, and if we don't control it, then we allow it to control us. And debt is one of the ways it controls us. So once we get in that debt cycle and we tend to go deeper and deeper and deeper into it, not knowing how to get out, then we're handcuffed. We can't do the things that we want to do because all of our money's going to the debt, and paying off that debt is, 100 years from now.
Sure.
Getting out is a challenge.
Well, debt, Elizabeth, debt destroys businesses. It destroys relationships. It destroys marriages. It destroys families. Debt is a destroyer. And what I like about this chapter is it gives a roadmap of how to get control over that to where you can get through it.
Absolutely. And for me, it always cycles back to the paying attention. And even though I wrote the book, I still make mistakes, even though I share all these ways out and the things to avoid. And last year, my mother came to stay with me for an extended visit, and she got very sick, and she has lung disease. So we had 3 periods of her being in the hospital while she was here. And I'm trying to still run my life and run my business. And I'm not doing it very well because I'm going back and forth to the hospital. I'm very distracted. Well, at the same time, I'm not paying attention to my money. And I think to myself, and this is where I'll caution everybody, I'm like, it's okay, my bills are being paid because I got everything set up on auto pay. So I didn't have to worry about that. But I'm running through money because I'm doing these things that are not in my typical pattern. Routine. And then I got to the end of all that, and when things slow down and calm down, and I go look at it, I'm like, I had no idea. I mean, it was $20 here and $50 there and $100 there, but I've spent like $5,000. So when we don't pay attention, that's when we get in trouble.
Yeah, and it's hard, a lot of times people don't understand where their money goes, but it's impossible to know where it goes unless you're tracking it, unless you have a budget, so that you can count your pennies. I heard somebody say one time, life is all about counting pennies. And it really is when it comes to controlling your finance, right?
Yes.
Okay, so control over your debt. I love this chapter here. Multiply your benefits.
Oh, you're going to have to refresh my memory. Is that the one where I talk about the compounding effect of money?
Yes.
You see, it's been with a publisher for a while. I haven't read through it. I love the compounding story. And what I would love is for every child in America to know this story when they're learning how to count pennies, to learn how money multiplies. And if I had a do-over, I would go back and with both of my kids at age 18 or 17 or somewhere in there, I would put $3,000 or $5,000 in an account, probably not tell them about it, and let it sit there.
Sure.
And let it grow for them, so that by the time they get to age 50 or 60, they could potentially have $1 million.
Right.
And that is what is so mind-boggling even when you understand compounding, you still look at it and it's like magic. It
Sure.
really is.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people, even older people, do not understand. They don't understand that compounding effect that money can have. That you're either going to spend it on whatever, or you're going to put it over here, let it compound to where you have a lot of money down the road. Yes? Okay.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about this. We're running out of time, and I hate that. We always run out of time, and I hate that. But I'll have you back. The last chapter, the title of it is Possess Your Land. Let's talk about that.
Well, in that chapter, I do talk about the house, but really what I think, and it's hard for me to articulate this, but it's like we were given such a gift, and we live in the greatest country, despite what may go on throughout the ages in politics and so forth. We live in the greatest country. We can own property. We can make as much money as we are capable of or as we work to do. We can own businesses and so forth. And so possess your land is really about taking ownership over everything, your gifts, your talents, your property, your money, your children. And I don't mean that in a weird control way, but just possess. God gave you whatever it is that he gave you in life, and certainly filled with challenges and turmoil, but own it. Just own it.
You know, I got to throw this in here because it's not just owning all of the great things that God has blessed you with, but it's also owning who you are, mistakes that you've made. Own it. Be responsible. There's freedom in that. You know, the Bible talks about the truth setting you free. A lot of people don't understand that to really realize that owning everything that goes on around you, good or bad, sets you free, gives you responsibility of who you are, and allows you to get out of wherever that has brought you into a better situation.
I agree, and I think back to, like, you know, so many of the stories in the Bible that we read, and where someone does go through some trials that look very ominous, but they come out in a better place. It's built their character, and we don't know what God has in store for us.
Right.
And I choose to believe that what's coming is better than what's behind me.
It's important to choose. It's important to make your choices. You just said it, and you just said it. I choose to believe. We live with the freedom of choice, and how we choose determines where we go and who we are. And you just said it. It should be the theme of every person walking the planet. I choose to believe. Elizabeth, you are rare. You're a treat. I can't wait for this book to come out. I can't wait for people all over the globe to read it. I hope and pray that it helps multitudes. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming. We'll have you back when the book, 6 months from now, when everybody's reading the book, and you're already on a lot of shows a lot bigger than mine. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the compliments, too.
You're welcome. Terry, let's go, buddy.